executive officer climbing up from below. "Hot tea, sir," Lieutenant Yoshi Motoshita said, thrusting a small cup towards the commander. "Yes, thanks," Ogawa replied crisply, before gulping at the tea. "Yoshi, you'll initiate a zigzag running pattern when we reach the strait. Then we'll submerge before we leave the mainland." "I will alert the crew, sir." "And Dr. Tanaka. See that he is situated comfortably." "I have offered him my cabin," Motoshita said, with a pained look. As were most subs of its era, the I-403 was powered by diesel and electric motors. In daylight hours, the I-403 would operate submerged, powered by battery-operated electric motors that pushed the sub along at a sluggish 6 knots per hour. Under cover of darkness, the I-403 would surface and crank up the diesel engines, which propelled the boat to better than 18 knots while recharging the batteries. But the I-403 was no ordinary submarine. Stretching over 390 feet long, the I-403 was one of a handful of Sentoku-class submarines, which were the largest built in their day. The I-403's truly unique feature was the vessel's armament of aircraft. The I-403 could carry 3 Searan floatplanes, which were small converted dive bombers that could be launched from a catapult on the center bow. While traveling at sea, the planes were disassembled and stored in a 110-foot-long watertight hangar that stretched along the sub's deck. A shortage of aircraft had forced Ogawa to give up one of his seaplanes for coastal reconnaissance, however, and his vessel now carried just 2 of the Searan aircraft. Once the I-403 had safely entered the Pacific, Ogawa retired to his cabin and reread the brief mission orders Uranuchi had given him. The succinct commands called for him to sail a northerly route across the Pacific, with a refueling stop in the Aleutians. He was to proceed to the northwest coast of the United States, where his 2 aircraft were to launch air attacks on the cities of Tacoma, Seattle, Victoria, and Vancouver. Summoned to Ogawa's cabin, Tanaka bowed gracefully before entering the cramped quarters and seating himself at a small wooden table. Dispensing with formalities, Ogawa pressed immediately for the nature of the doctor's presence. "Dr. Tanaka, my written orders are to sail this vessel to the west coast of North America and launch an airborne attack on 4 cities. There is no mention of your duties or the nature of your cargo. I must ask what your role in the mission is." "Commander, I am with the Army Medical School's Epidemic Disease Prevention Study Group. We have received materials from a research facility in China that have enabled us to develop an effective new weapon against the enemy. Your submarine has been chosen as the means to launch the weapon for the first time against American forces. I am responsible for the security and deployment of the weapon on this mission." "These materials, they will be dropped from my aircraft?" "Yes, in special canisters that can be accommodated by your bombers." "And the men on my vessel, are they in any danger with this weapon aboard?" "None whatsoever." Tanaka's face was inscrutable as he lied. The sporadic ocean traffic of merchant ships and fishing boats soon dissipated as the Japanese mainland fell behind the sub's wake and the vessel crawled further north in latitude. For the next 12 days and nights, the crew embraced a normal operating schedule as the sub nosed northeast, surfacing at night to run at higher speed. On the 14th night, the I-403 surfaced near the Aleutian island of Amchitka and quickly found the supply ship Morioka anchored in a small cove. As diesel fuel was pumped into the submarine's reservoir tanks, crewmen on each vessel bantered back and forth in the freezing cold. The refueling operation was completed in less than 3 hours. One of the submarine's crewmen, diagnosed as suffering an acute bout of appendicitis, was transferred to the ship for medical attention. After rewarding the supply ship crew with a box of hard candies, the I-403 cast off on an eastward tack towards North America. The skies gradually turned black, and the gray-green ocean waters frothed with spray as the I-403 found herself sailing into the teeth of an early winter storm. The sub was tossed violently for 3 nights as waves flooded across the low deck and crashed into the conning tower as the sub attempted to recharge its batteries. Gradually, the winds began to ease, and the seas flattened. "Captain, I have a final plot to the coast," Seiji Kakashita remarked, as he unrolled a chart of the northeast Pacific Ocean in front of Ogawa. The I-403's navigator had ceased shaving like many crewmen upon leaving port, and sported a straggly tuft of hair from his chin that created a cartoonish look about him. "What is our present position?" Ogawa inquired. "Right here," Kakashita replied, as he pointed to a spot on the map with a pair of dividers. "Approximately 200 kilometers west of Vancouver Island. We have 2 more hours of darkness for surface running, which will bring us to within 150 kilometers of land by daybreak on our current heading." Ogawa studied the chart intently for a few moments before speaking. "We are too far north. I wish to launch the attack from a point central to the 4 targets, in order to minimize flight time. Bring us south, and we'll approach the coastline here," he said, stubbing his finger at the map. Beneath his finger lay the northwest tip of Washington State, an angular peak of land that jutted into the Pacific Ocean like the snout of a hungry dog. Just to the north lie the Strait of Juan de Fuca, which created a natural border channel with British Columbia, and was the main thoroughfare for maritime traffic from Vancouver and Seattle into the Pacific Ocean. A buzz of activity overtook the I-403 after it surfaced again that evening, as preparations were made to launch the aerial strike. Mechanics pulled out the fuselage, wings, and pontoons of the aircraft, and began piecing the parts together like some giant toy model. Seamen rigged the hydraulic catapult, and carefully tested the device by which the planes would be launched. The pilots attentively studied topographic maps of the region, plotting their course to the drop zones and return. And the ordnance men, under the cautious direction of Dr. Tanaka, configured the bomb racks of the Searan bombers to hold the silver canisters still stored in the forward torpedo room. By 3 in the morning, the I-403 had crept quietly to its staging point off the Washington coast. Another hour had ticked by when a hurried, squat man in a grease-stained jumpsuit approached Ogawa tentatively. "Sir, sorry to report we are having troubles with the aircraft." "What is the problem at this late hour?" Ogawa countered. "Aircraft number 1 has been found to have a faulty magneto. Aircraft number 2 has a damaged elevator, apparently due to shifting that occurred during the storm." "And how long will it require to complete both repairs?" Ogawa asked. The mechanic looked skyward for a moment, contemplating his response. "Approximately 1 hour for the repairs, sir, plus another 20 minutes to load the ordnance from below deck." Ogawa nodded grimly. "Proceed with all haste." 1 hour turned into 2, and still the planes were not ready. Ogawa's impatience grew as he noticed gray streaks in the eastern sky, signaling the approaching dawn. Then the stillness of the morning air was shattered, as a cry from the sound detection operator below deck pierced the air. "Captain, I have an echo!" "I've got you this time, big brother," Steve Shower yelled into the radio transmitter with a grin, then pushed a pair of throttles to their stops. Alongside him, in the fishing trawler's cramped cabin, 2 teenage crewmen, exhausted and reeking of dead fish, looked at each other and rolled their eyes. A pair of 40-ish siblings with youth in their veins, Steve and Doug Shower, had spent their lives fishing the waters in and around Puget Sound. With skill and hard work, they had thrown all their earnings into ever larger fishing boats, until they traded up for a matched pair of 50-foot wooden-hull trawlers. "It ain't over till the paint scratches the dock," Doug's voice crackled over the radio. As Shower's boat chugged along at its top speed of 12 knots, the skies lightened from black to gray, and a spotlight beam shining on the water ahead of the bow gradually lost its illuminating effect.